Matt, for hundreds of years, this famous Royal Mile has hosted processions of kings and queens. But the scene today, there's never been anything quite like it. From the crowds as deep as these narrow old streets would allow, to the almost eerie sound on the cobblestones of horseshoes and formal shoes belonging to the king himself as he walked behind his mother's coffin, up the Royal Mile to the cathedral here and into a service of the most remarkable warmth. Now, the King has been speaking about that warmth tonight in the Scottish Parliament. He said there was a deep and abiding bond between the Queen and the people of Scotland. Now, as you say, sometime soon we expect to see the King return here for a tradition known as the Vigil of the Princes. He and his siblings will stand next to the coffin here at St Giles Cathedral, and when they leave, the coffin will remain at rest here. The public will file past and pay their respects long into the night on this most momentous day. The King steps onto Scottish soil and into a day of ceremony and solemnity. Greeted, head bowed, by the First Minister of Scotland. Joining the Queen's final journey, beginning one of his own. Down the Royal Mile, on a wave of applause, to the Palace of Holyrood House, where the Queen lay overnight. A guard of honour, his official residence now. His name in the anthem. His arrival marked by a 21-gun salute from the castle. As the keys to this great city are passed to the new king. Formality and informality. The king and queen consort with the crowds. Meetings of eyes and hearts. The coffin is draped in the royal standard for Scotland. Upon it, a wreath with heather from the Queen's Highland haven, Balmoral. And begins its climb up the Royal Mile. Pavements packed along this narrow street, heavy with the history of kings and queens past and present. King Charles follows on foot with his 3 siblings. A lone man heckling Prince Andrew, drowned out with shouts of "God save the King," led to his arrest. Further up, they wait in silence. There is a profound intimacy here, multiplied many thousand-fold, a feeling strong enough almost for the king to touch. His focus is ahead. One step at a time. This mournful march brings the cortege to St Giles Cathedral. The Queen, whose faith ran deep, will be celebrated here. And remembered. The crown of Scotland was hers longer than anyone's.
So we gather to bid Scotland's farewell to our late monarch, whose life of service to the nation and the world we celebrate, and whose love for Scotland was legendary.
Among the congregation, political leaders, those the Queen met over a lifetime in Scotland. Echoes of earlier times, Psalm 23, performed at her marriage. Outside His Majesty, arm raised in appreciation for the many who turned out.
I felt as if I was the only person here for a moment, just paying homage to a homage, whatever you want to say. It's just such an absolutely fabulous woman.
Until tomorrow, the coffin will lie at rest in the cathedral. This queue is to file past it. Sheila is at the front.
I'm hoping we get a chance just to bow our heads, and I was going to say what Paddington Bear said. Thank you, Mum, for everything.
Tonight, his first visit as king to the Scottish Parliament. Fanfare first, then 2 minutes silence. And condolences.
While the nation's grief is for our Queen, the royal families is for their beloved mother, grandmother and great-grandmother. Today, on behalf of the Parliament and people of Scotland, I offer my heartfelt condolences to your Majesties.
The King rose to his feet. It was here that his mother spoke of her deep affection for Scotland.
I know that the Scottish Parliament and the people of Scotland share with me a profound sense of grief at the death of my beloved mother. My mother felt, as I do, the greatest admiration for the Scottish people, for their magnificent achievements and their indomitable spirit.
Today, that affection was returned.
Kieran Jenkins reporting. Well, Edinburgh's Royal Mile is a narrow stretch of cobbled road where thousands of people from all over the United Kingdom and indeed the world packed in today, cheek by jowl, to watch the Queen's coffin make its journey from the Palace of Holyrood House behind me in a slow procession to St Giles Cathedral halfway up the hill. The predominant sound was silence, followed by reflections. A royal salute for a new era. Smartphones aloft to capture the hooves of history. The private grief of a family playing two roles, bereaved offspring and public servants. Prince Andrew allowed back into the fold for this period of mourning, but here not allowed to wear his uniform. Their eyes glued on the new king, a son of 73 who now needs to perform the job that he was born into at the age when most of us have retired.
It was just emotional, the hearse and then obviously the king and the rest of the royal family, being so close to them, that really brought home how upsetting it must be that they have to go through this and then they'll have to do it all again on Monday. So yeah, my heart went out to them.
I think it was important to be there. I know that maybe sounds a bit daft and old-fashioned, but if it is, it's 350,000. We're feeling the same way, and just wanted to say thank you for all the service, really.
A terrible amount of sadness, and as a lot of people probably feel, they probably didn't realise how this would have affected them so deeply, especially having seen photographs and footage of our meeting the new Prime Minister, and then suddenly
almost a week ago, right?
within days, hours, she's gone.
It's a complex layering of emotions quietly churning the crowd here. Personal grief triggered by public mourning, remembrance of times past and perhaps values trampled on. Politics is suspended for now, but not extinguished, just cloaked in discretion.
For me, support the union, but possibly things will change and it will have some bearing, obviously.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How do you think they might change?
I think possibly we will see independence maybe a bit quicker because of this.
Well, no. I've sat and watched some of it, and the opinion I get is how out of touch and out of time this is. Yes, it is tradition, but I think it just highlights that this is like a fairy tale. It's like a scene out of a Disney movie. It certainly isn't modern Scotland or modern Europe. So I think it will increase the pressure for Scotland to become independent as soon as possible.
We're proud to be British. As you see that on the account, Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland, England. That's what keeps us like that. Keeps us British.
Don't worry, just a precaution. But the balance between liberty and security, between the Union and nationalist sentiment, are some of the big questions which will demand answers when normal reality resumes. Well, Angus Robertson was the leader of the SNP in Westminster and is now the Scottish Government's Cabinet Secretary for the Constitution. And Dr. Eve Poole is the Chief Executive of the Royal Society of Edinburgh, Scotland's National Academy of Science and Letters. She's been chairman of the governors at Gordonstoun, Charles's old school. Welcome to you both. Let me start with you, Eve. The fact that the Queen passed in Scotland and that we had this extraordinary outpouring of public grief for her here, how significant was that to you as well?
I think that's really significant. The people of Scotland adored their Queen, as they did her mother before her, and it feels really appropriate that we've been able to start the public grieving here in a country that she loved and that really loved her.
Because if she hadn't passed in Scotland, it would have been, you know, very complicated to have the coffin come up here, wouldn't it?
I think that's right. I just think it would have felt more disjointed and it would have been harder for Scotland to feel part of it. I think the fact that the Queen, very wise lady, chose to die here I think it was a great honour for us and a great privilege for us to be able to start that process as she journeys south.
What about you, Angus Robertson? I mean, I've talked to unionists in the last few weeks who've said, well, actually, since she died in the last week, who said her passing in Scotland is the most powerful message that she could have sent to the Union.
Today, I think, is not a day for the politics of Scotland's constitutional debate. And I think most people in Scotland can differentiate. We have two unions, of course, the Union of the Crowns, 1603, and the Union of our Parliament, 1707. And the constitutional future of Scotland is about our parliamentary, our democratic future. King Charles III, I think, will make a great king of Scots and Scotland, and loves Scotland as his mother, as his grandmother did, is very connected with people here. And I think what we've been witnessing has been people's reaction in Scotland, regardless of their feelings about Scottish independence, yes or no, of saying we respected Queen Elizabeth. And I have to say, just on a personal level, watching King Charles, I mean, what an extraordinarily difficult challenge to literally lose your mother, and within a day or two, you're on public show where everybody can see you, everybody can hear you, everybody can make their own impressions about how you are, at a time when you are grieving intensively. I mean, my heart goes out to the man and to his family. It must be an absolutely awful test.
Because every private emotion is on public display, isn't it?
Absolutely right, and I just think that you have to draw deeply in those moments. And you mentioned that I was chairman of Gordonstoun, and I think that one of the things that Gordonstoun held very dear was the development of character. And my goodness, does King Charles III need to draw on every ounce of that character as he goes through these next few days and months and years.
But by all accounts, his character was forged on the anvil of Gordonstoun. He wasn't very happy about it. Is that true?
Well, there's a lot of mythology about King Charles III and Gordonstoun. I think in those days, school was to be endured, not enjoyed.
Right.
But he has said many things about how Gordonstoun inspired him to do things like create the Prince's Trust and inspired his life of service. And all of those values are things that we have seen his mother and his father also display and are very much a part of his character, which I think will stand him in extremely good stead as our king.
I know you don't want to talk politics, and we're not going to talk politics, but we're going to hint at it, because everything, this whole ceremony is, at the end of the day, steeped in the politics of a different era, the politics of a different age. So if you were to become independent eventually, would he, the king, be your head of state?
Indeed, as he is of Canada and of Australia and New Zealand and elsewhere in the Commonwealth. So I mean, I don't think that's a huge question. Obviously, the constitutional future of Scotland is, but I mean, just going back
that continuity is very important as well, isn't it, for you, in order to reassure people if you were to become independent?
Well, indeed. And I mean, what we're talking about is moving power from Westminster to the Scottish Parliament and not changing our head of state. But, these are things that are going to be discussed in time. We're going to have a referendum. We're going to make up our minds about all of this. Today is a day where people in Scotland are saying goodbye to Queen Elizabeth. And she is literally leaving the country tomorrow and going down to London. We have different traditions and we have different histories here, and we've been able to see that, and people have been able to experience that, and I think that is a thoroughly good thing given the connection that Queen Elizabeth had to Scotland.
Eve, what do you think in terms of strengthening the union or not in this particular case?
I think what we have seen in the grief for the Queen and the puzzlement I think so many people feel about what her death means is a real sense of wanting to belong to something important, all those things she stood for. So I don't know what effect it will have politically, but it has made everybody pause and reflect on what we hold in common rather than the things that divide us, which is something that I think is very important.
And what do you think people here expect from their new king, people in Scotland especially?
Well, I mean, the first thing is people already know him. I mean, he has had the longest apprenticeship on record, having been Prince of Wales, Djugorothi and all of that. He has come to Scotland his entire life. He was schooled in Scotland. And so he knows Scotland very well, and he has a close connection, not just with the country, but with the people. That's what he said in the parliamentary chamber. That's what I was listening to him say. And I think that means a lot to him, as it did to his mother. And I think that relationship with the people is something that will endure.
You expect him to spend a lot of time in Balmoral as well, like his mother?
I think he probably will want to be in Balmoral because it's a place that the royal family have always gone to for solace and for holiday.
And it belongs to them, doesn't it? It's
yes, indeed.
So finally, we had the episode of the protester here today who was arrested. I think 2 other protesters have been arrested and have been charged. I mean, I don't want to go into specifics of each individual case, but do you think it's right for people who express their opinions about monarchy to be charged?
I don't know about the circumstances, so it would be wrong for me to get involved in that. Of course, we live in a country where people should be free to make their views known about every and any subject. Having said that, today is a day about mourning, and I think where respect is shown when somebody has died probably is the best thing, the best thing to do, but people should also be able to protest.
Right. What do you think?
I couldn't possibly comment. I think today is a day for mourning, and I would rather reflect on the Queen and the new King.
Thank you very much indeed. Good point. Paul, Angus Robertson, thank you very much to both of you.